5% off your subscription and a free title history report to ensure you are not already a victim. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BILL20.
Attention St. Charles, looking for a local spot that satisfies all your cravings? Mario's Donut Restaurant is your place to go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. From mouth-watering sandwiches and omelets to delicious gyros, Mexican dishes, salads, and wraps, we've got it all. And don't forget our famous donuts. They're so good, they'll make your eyes glaze over. Dine in or carry out. Our friendly staff is ready to serve you with love and care. Mention News Talk STL when you visit. Call 636-447-4515 or visit mariosdonutrestaurant.com.
Hey there, Chris Cooper here. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. on News Talk STL for a little fun with finance. We'll talk about taxes, the economy, finance, and most importantly, how to enjoy the lifestyle you deserve.
Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL.
Tune in on Sunday and visit serenitynowtax.com for your free copy of my book, The New Holistic Retirement. That's serenitynowtax.com.
Serenity Now!
Now, the O'Reilly Update brings you something you might not know. 18 years ago today, Apple CEO Steve Jobs unveiled the first iPhone at a conference in San Francisco. The product would soon become the most important invention of the 21st century. Here is the story. Jobs first had the idea for a touch-based telephone back in 2003. He wanted to combine several products into one: a music player, web browser, camera, phone. To keep the concept a secret, developers used the code name Purple. The workspace used by engineers was called the Purple Dorm. Steve Jobs unveiled the product on January 9th, 2007, to mixed reviews. Some panned the device as an overpriced calculator. Others believed Americans would never pay $500 for a phone. At the time, most cells were given away free when customers signed a contract. Its main competition was the Motorola Razr, which sold for just $40. On June 29th, 2007, Apple stores began selling the iPhone to the public. Time magazine quickly hailed the device as the invention of the year. The gadget went on sale in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The iPhone has transformed the company Apple into one of the most profitable businesses ever on the planet. Since its release 18 years ago, more than 2.2 billion iPhones have been sold. I bet you have one. Industry insiders believe Apple's next major release could be as revolutionary as the last. Since 2014, the company has been developing a self-driving electric car. And here's something else you might not know. While the iPhone spawned an entire industry of apps and accessories, it also killed hundreds of mainstream products. One iPhone in your pocket replaces a flashlight, GPS system, camera, TV, computer, fax machine, clock, radio, address book, calendar, credit card, calculator, and of course, the telephone. But it will never replace me. Back after this. Many believe President Trump's victory is a big win for the American economy because Bidenomics really punished many Americans. I rely on physical precious metals like gold and silver to safeguard my retirement savings. And the only precious metals company I trust is American Hartford Gold. A tax-advantaged gold IRA can protect your savings from inflation, recession, and stock market downturns. You can roll over your 401k or IRA tax and penalty free. With thousands of five-star ratings, an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, American Hartford Gold has delivered billions in precious metals. Act now. Call or text American Hartford Gold today. Tell them Bill O'Reilly sent you for up to $15,000 of free silver on qualifying offers. Here's the number, 877-444-GOLD, or you can text GOLD Gold to 65532. That's 877-444-GOLD or text GOLD to 65532. Thank you for listening to the O'Reilly Update. I am Bill O'Reilly. No spin, just facts, and always looking out for you.
News, analysis, opinion. News Talk STL. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Belfast, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. Fires continue to rage across areas of Los Angeles, though the Santa Ana winds have abated somewhat. In the deadly Pacific Palisades fire, resident Dylan Vincent is concerned for his neighbors.
I think it's definitely tough. There's a lot of people who don't have insurance or fire insurance. I know that's difficult in this area, especially if you're in the fire zone, and I feel horrible for them.
But Vincent anticipates recovering from the fire.
It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time, but I love Pacific Palisades, and I really trusted my home to come back together and rebuild.
5 people have died in the conflagrations. Roughly 180,000 people are under evacuation orders in the Los Angeles area. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter has been honored with a solemn military funeral in the nation's capital. The late President Carter's grandson, Joshua Carter, remembers his grandfather as one who devoted his life to aiding others.
My grandfather spent the entire time I've known him helping those in need. He built houses for people that needed homes. He eliminated diseases in forgotten places. He waged peace anywhere in the world, wherever he saw a chance.
President Biden eulogized Mr. Carter in Washington. Mr. Carter's other living successors attended along with other dignitaries. His afternoon funeral in Plains, Georgia is a small affair limited to family, friends, and members of Maranatha Baptist Church. Carter will be buried alongside his late wife, Rosalind Carter, in the same town where they were born, lived most of their lives, and died. Some Democrats say they'll vote with Republicans to advance legislation that would require federal authorities to detain illegal immigrants who've been accused of certain crimes. They'll vote to proceed with the legislation. On Wall Street, markets were closed today. More at townhall.com.
Hi, everyone. If you or someone you know were diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma, listen up. This could be the result of asbestos exposure, and you could be entitled to significant compensation. Call us at 800-818-0200 to find out if you qualify for a cash settlement. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell our listeners who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me here to help the listeners. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma should give us a call right now and find out if you qualify for a cash settlement. Call 800-818-0200.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. If you or a loved one were diagnosed with lung cancer or mesothelioma, call right now to find out if you qualify for cash compensation. 800-818-0200.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A First Alert weather day tonight into Friday as more snow's on the way. Not as big of a storm as Sunday, but still some accumulation that can make for a Friday morning mess for the commute. Low of 27 degrees, and snow will start late evening, possibly more likely after midnight, and continue through the morning. Tapering off in the afternoon. Might still have some light snow showers, though, between noon and 3. Totals around 2 to 4 inches across St. Louis, higher to the south, less to the north. A high of 32, so some of the snow will start to melt a little bit Friday. More melting over the weekend. Partly cloudy skies both Saturday, Sunday. A high of 35 Saturday and 38 for Sunday. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Well, the holiday season is in our rearview mirror, but there's another holiday coming up, and you better make sure you're ready for the special people in your life and getting them what they deserve. Newstetter's Fine Jewelers, of course, here to help. We're going to have a special promotion coming up for the big Valentine's Day holiday, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I want you to check out Newstetter's and everything they have to offer for the special people in your life. They've been around, Newstetter's has, since 1961. That is a testament in and of itself to the incredible things they have and the wonderful people they have there showing you all of their wonderful wares. This is much more than a jewelry store. This is an independently owned, local, and family-owned operation that has built friendships that have lasted decades because they have provided people wonderful jewelry, everything from diamonds to rings to pearls to watches to gemstones, earrings, bracelets, and beyond. They also create masterpieces that become family heirlooms because Richard Newstetter is a master engraver. One of the last, but it's not a dying art here in St. Louis, not a dying art at Newstetter's. They're located in the heart of the county of St. Louis, 2961 Daugherty Ferry Road, 2 miles west of Interstate 270, and they're found 24/7 at their fantastically beautiful website, wowdiamonds.com. Newstetter's Fine Jewelers does not mean expensive jewelry. Fine jewelry doesn't mean expensive jewelry because they will work with your budget. They'll absolutely take care of you without breaking the bank. They do all repairs in addition to all the wonderful other products that I mentioned to you. We know so many News Talk STL Nation listeners, including ourselves, who have been very happy with everything that Richard and Eric and Diana and the whole crew have done to provide such beautiful things for the beautiful people in our lives. Weekdays, 10 a.m. to 5:30, Saturdays, 10 to 3, and 24/7, as I mentioned, at wowdiamonds.com. That's Newstetter's Fine Jewelers at wowdiamonds.com.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
The Supreme Court start hearing arguments on a case that pits your right to free speech versus what some say is a threat to national security. Which should come first? We're talking about it on Friday.
Mornings starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
So we are watching in real time these devastating and deadly wildfires in Los Angeles County. 5 dead, thousands of structures leveled. We don't know how many of those are businesses and how many of those are homes. It is just too urgent of a situation right now to get a specific count. We can tell you in recent moments, officials lifted some evacuation orders in Hollywood, but many of the people go back to find nothing. They're out of their homes. And, you know, when you hear about looters and you think, well, wait a minute, the homes are leveled. Keep in mind, fire jumps. So one home is standing, others are burned on a street. What is certain is most people are not there by their homes. And so that means that looters are seeing an opportunity.
It is an absolute California catastrophe. I know that sounds like a day ending in Y for the left coast state, but in all seriousness, it is an absolute disaster. Lots of blame and finger pointing going around. But Chris Arps, this is pointing out some of the policy failures of Governor Newsom and California Democrats, and it is destroying the lives and livelihoods of millions of Californians.
I mean, Tim, I was hearing reports from some of the people that lived in that area and people that watched that area closely that said some of the brush surrounding those homes haven't been cleared in close to 30 years. You're just asking for a major disaster like this when you have all of that kindling laying around, and then you have these so-called Santa Ana winds, which can gust up to 100 miles an hour. And, you know, you remember when you were a little boy, when you went camping, that when you have fire and you have a lot of wind, you know, a lot of oxygen, you're just going to have an inferno. And that's basically what we're having there in Los Angeles. And there's a controversy surrounding this, Tim. Not only the water was not available to put these fires out. We've talked about the kindling that surrounded this area. But the mayor, Karen Bass, former congresswoman, was in Ghana. She was attending the inauguration of the president in Ghana. Now, people would say, hey, you can't blame her for going to Ghana. This was just bad luck, you know, that she was out of town. But, Tim, she was warned a couple of days before she left that the Santa Ana winds were going to be significant and the risk of fire would be significant. And she went anyway. So that is the controversy that's brewing along with these fires.
Long list of controversies and a lot of finger pointing, of course, ensuing. We're going to discuss that with our national security, cybersecurity, military special ops expert, all of that and more. He is Steve Bucci, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I know he'll have quite a few comments to regale us with on this. And as you pointed out, Chris, when you don't let humankind or even God himself do the things when you prevent that from happening, clearing of brush, they even prevent like natural effects from clearing things out. When you don't trim the forests and the vegetation, when you run the water into the ocean instead of preserving it in reservoir areas because you've displaced all of that with residential and business housings, you're asking for disaster. This is not good management. They're going to blame it all on climate change, and they're not going to accept any responsibility for the misplaced efforts of their own policies themselves.
And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that these fires will be, quote, the costliest in U.S. history. Some estimates are saying $50 billion will be spent on this from insurance. And unfortunately, more than 2/5 of them are insured. So that means some of these people are not insured. Their total losses, their homes are gone. And it's a sad situation. There's a Facebook friend of mine. He is part of Breitbart News, Joel Pollack. His house was burned down, and he's been giving kind of hour by hour updates of what's been happening. And just the human spirit, Tim, people fight. He came back to his neighborhood and he helped a neighbor put out a fire in his front yard. And he said, even though there was total devastation around him, he said it felt good to fight, to feel like you're doing something. And, the human spirit's indomitable. And I think that's a testament of that.
All hail the first responders who are working tirelessly out there. I heard many of them are on like 96-hour shifts at this point. Absolutely devastating. And just to point out that this is not just one political party trying to take advantage of another, putting the politics of this aside. There are plenty of liberal-leaning activists who have come forward, like Sarah Foster, who said on Twitter X today, we pay the highest taxes in California. Our fire hydrants are empty. Our vegetation is overgrown. Brush has not been cleared. Our reservoirs were emptied by our governor because tribal leaders wanted to save the smelt fish. Our fire department budget was cut by our mayor, Karen Bass. But thank God drug addicts are getting their drug kits. Governor Newsom, Mayor Bass, resign. Your far left policies have ruined our state. And then she says, and also our party, which means she's a Democrat attacking these left-wing liberal policies.
Here's the sad thing: what happened to these last fires that happened that destroyed a lot of homes and acreage and everything. I forgot what my point of this was. Something. Oh, here's what it was: is the electric company out there, PG&G, I think is the name. They were blamed for these fires because the high winds knocked down their wires, Tim. And because all of this brush was left around, of course, it made great kindling and started these fires. But they were blamed for the start of these fires because their wires, got blown down by the wind, instead of the U.S. government and California government being responsible because of not clearing this brush. It's like completely bizarro world.
We'll talk to Steve Bucci about all that and all of the other international issues around the country. And Chris, you know what? We can also ask him about another huge major news story of the day, the legacy of President Jimmy Carter, who was laid to rest today in a really dramatic ceremony, as they always are for former presidents. That occurred today as well. That was another one of the top news stories of the day. I'm sure Steve will have a few comments on that too.
And got a really interesting thing connected to Jimmy Carter we'll talk about at the end of the show. Of course, he was the oldest living ex-president, lived to 100. And Axios, I think it was, Tim, took a look at if some of our current presidents or past presidents had lived 100 years, how much into the future they would have lived and what they would have seen. And it was very interesting. And we'll talk about that at the end of the show at 5:45.
Excellent. 100 years. Amazing indeed. At 4:45, we're going to have Chris's Corner.
But what's really crazy, though, is, Tim, you remember we're about the same age. 100 years you always thought was like 1800, 18 something. It's weird now that 100 years is 1920.
Yes.
3.
I'm like, uh-oh.
I mean, that's just.
That means we're getting older.
Yeah, that's crazy that 100 years is not 1890 or something. Hey, we'll talk about the latest news. A lot of lawfare, a lot of legal news regarding Donald Trump. Today, we'll talk about the federal judge has blocked the Biden administration's Title IX rewrite. We'll talk about that and other lawfare today as well at 4:45 on Chris's Corner.
Excellent indeed. At 5:07, Speaker Stump Speech, I'm going to focus on an article that came out of Axios. Axios, a centrist, center-left-leaning publication that comes out of Washington, D.C. They did an interesting expose on Trump's ever-expansive power, how Donald Trump has already had a major effect on the world, not just the United States, and he hasn't even been sworn in yet. The last 2 months have been fascinating. It's another thing that we really haven't seen in modern history, the effect of a president-elect on the planet.
Yeah.
Speaking of newsmakers, 5:25, we're going to speak to Congressman Bob Onder, Chris, about the first action of the U.S. Congress. They've already hit the ground running. They've only been in session for 3 days, and they've already passed the Laken-Riley Act. We'll ask the good congressman, what is in that act? What are the prospects for it passing the Senate? And what will it do to protect Americans moving forward?
You know, one thing that Political article cites is that regarding the power of Donald Trump, you haven't seen too many times in history, Tim, when a president-elect has world leaders coming to see him. And that's just a glaring visual right there. And it's because this isn't his first go-around, his first rodeo.
One of the long list of items that's specifically mentioned in that Axios article. Bob Onder also, I noticed today, Chris, I haven't been able to, Bob Onder's got a great communications team. I haven't been able to keep up with all the press releases. They are voting on a ton of different things in Congress right now. So in addition to the Laken-Riley Act, Chris, it's great to see that the Speaker Johnson-led Republican Congress is taking their jobs very seriously, at least in the first week that they're in session, and they are extremely busy bees.
Yeah, and speaking of the Laken-Riley Act, Tim, it's going to probably pass. Senator Katie Britt of Alabama sponsored that legislation along with Senator John Fetterman. They announced today, Tim, that they have enough senators to block a filibuster. So
60,
they have 60 votes for this vote. So it is expected to pass tomorrow. I'm sure that they'll wait and send it to Donald Trump when he's president instead of sending it to Joe Biden. But this looks like is going to be the first legislation that the 119th Congress passes.
Assuming all 53 Republicans vote for it, that means 7 Democrats will cross over and join this bipartisan legislation.
Yeah.
That's really notable. And it perhaps is a signal that the Democratic Party, at least in the U.S. Senate, is realizing it needs to tack a little bit back towards the center.
It does, but you have some of these Democrats that still don't get it. Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona, he's worried about, he wants to add amendments to the bill, Tim. He's worried about how this would deal with dreamers. I don't care if a dreamer commits a crime and is a crime of theft, which could potentially have him commit other crimes, if he is a drug addict or just a criminal, ends up murdering somebody. I don't care if they're a dreamer. They get deported. I mean, the Democrats just hanging their hat on this and falling on the sword on this is just ridiculous to me, especially after we just seen with this election, and especially when you see that President Trump's main prerogatives are going to be immigration and the border. To still following the sword is stupid.
It'd be nice to see Arizonans get their act together and perhaps give Mark Kelly a challenge. He's been a bit of a zero in the Senate, and when he does poke his head up, it seems to be on the wrong side of every issue, as you just pointed out. I mean, Arizonans voted for Donald Trump. They didn't get what's her face across the finish line, but she's the former news broadcaster. She's run twice now.
How can we forget her?
She's going to run
Joey
help
knows.
Us.
Come
Carrie
on.
Lake.
Carrie Lake. Yeah.
Carrie Lake. She was a little bit of damaged goods running the second time, but maybe they'll get some a better challenger whenever he comes up for election.
Speaking of some immigration news here, Tim, Joe Biden's acting ICE director had some very harsh comments to say about Joe Biden's handling of the border.
Oh, yeah?
He said they said this to NBC News that he thinks Biden absolutely, quote unquote, should have imposed restrictions on immigration earlier in his presidency. He said, quote, also, he wishes that the Biden administration had been more transparent with the American public about immigration issues and that it had given his agency the freedom to be more vocal and public about its work and concerns, in part because more communication could have reduced misinformation. Look, I applaud this guy, the acting ICE director, for saying these comments now, but you should have been saying these comments when you were first appointed, and you should have resigned. This is Band-Aid on cancer to me, this statement. Your thoughts, Tim?
Everybody, my thought is, Chris, that I'm looking at my watch to see what the date is. Everybody's getting a clue suddenly 11 days before Donald Trump's inauguration.
Yeah, I think we call that rats leaving a sinking ship.
Reality bites.
Can you believe this guy?
I can't.
And then I've got a chutzpah comment that I'm going to read. It's a little long, but it's going to be a question that I'm going to have for Steve Bucci coming up regarding Anthony Blinken in Israel. Tim, the comment that he's going to make here on the way out of this administration ending is just unbelievable. And that'll be part of my question with Bucci.
Really looking forward to that discussion. Before we get out of here and get to our first break, Chris, I hope everyone enjoyed our extended 3-hour program in Jefferson City yesterday. Want to thank Joey for all the incredible
give yourself a hand,
work he does behind the scenes. There's the studio audience. I know they're here
come
somewhere.
on.
They've been a little quiet lately.
Give yourself a hand.
Yeah, they love Joey. Hey, they loved him. Joey did a great job. Jeff Allen and Joe Rush, thank you for supporting us year in and year out of doing this. Our 4th year at the Capitol. Chris, I want to thank Becky for herding all the cats for us yesterday. Becky Arps did a great job, took all the photos along with Jeff and Joey, and I hope everybody enjoyed that. We had the top newsmakers of Jefferson City, from Lieutenant Governor to the new Secretary of State to the Attorney General, some of the most prolific senators and representatives, and it was a fantastic show. If you missed it, check out the podcast. We don't mention that enough. We podcast every single program here at News Talk STL. So if you miss the morning show, or if you miss the evening show, or you miss any of the shows, you can go back, you can listen to us, you can get through them lickety split, and you won't miss a thing. So thank you to everyone here at the station for helping Chris and I pull this off every year, especially producer Joey, Jeff, Allen, and Joe Rush.
Yeah, and those of you that have been watching and listening since the beginning, I told these guys yesterday, I think yesterday was our best start of session show. We've done 4 of them, and I think this one was just action-packed with good questions and good answers from the candidates. We've got, as Tim said, all of the newsmakers. They made a little news. We heard some of their personal stories of why they ran, especially with Dr. Haruza. His story of coming from communist Czech Republic was very inspiring. So as we always say, the Republican Party has a very deep bench, Tim, and I think we talked to many members of that deep bench yesterday.
You can see all those photos on our various streaming platforms. You can go back and watch the show. You can watch the show today. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter X, Instagram, and Rumble were available on 5 streaming platforms. If you can't pick up the FM signals for any reason whatsoever, or if you're out of the listening area, simply download our app. Hope you all have the app by now. News Talk STL, the app, newstalkstl.com, News Talk STL on any of your smart speakers, News Talk STL. It's brilliant that we made it so simple for all y'all, and so we can remember it too. 423, we're going to get to Steve Bucci, Chris, next. As we said, we got a ton of questions for him, from the California wildfires to the situation in the Middle East and beyond. That will be our trip around the world with Steve Bucci next at 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
What the hell do you have to lose?
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A First Alert weather day tonight into Friday as more snow's on the way. Not as big of a storm as Sunday, but still some accumulation that can make for a Friday morning mess for the commute. Low of 27 degrees, and snow will start late evening, possibly more likely after midnight, and continue through the morning. Tapering off in the afternoon. Might still have some light snow showers, though, between noon and 3. Totals around 2 to 4 inches across St. Louis, higher to the south, less to the north. A high of 32, so some of the snow will start to melt a little bit Friday. More melting over the weekend. Partly cloudy skies will Saturday, Sunday. A high of 35 Saturday and 38 for Sunday. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Whether at home or at work, you're mobile. So when you're mobile, stay mobile. Keep St. Louis's home for conservative talk with you wherever you go. Download the News Talk STL app in the App Store or at newstalkstl.com.
Hey, I want to tell you all about Johnny's Hideout. What's tonight? Oh, there's games tonight. We forgot to mention that. Yeah, the big college BCS rolls on. We've got the, what do you call this? The quarterfinals or the semis? I think it's the semis, right? Because we've got 4 teams left. They're both going to play tonight, and the winners go to the big game. Yes, for the college folks. So you can go watch the college football BCS tonight at Johnny's Hideout. Blues games. You got the golf season. Yep, that's kicked off. Not here. They're in Hawaii. So all those things going on and more at Johnny's Hideout. 50 big screen TVs at Johnny's Hideout in High Ridge, which is the go-to St. Louis sports bar and grill experience. Fantastic food with a fantastic new menu, shareable apps, and more. We've had the pizza. We've had the big pretzels. We've had the salads, the wraps, the wings, everything delicious, everything fresh, everything good. Got a new GM over at Johnny's. Eric is just revamping things from top to bottom, making a fantastic product even better. Live local musicians every weekend. All of this is at jhideout.com and at Johnny's Hideout STL on Facebook. Johnny's Hideout, located 10 minutes from 270 in Gravois, open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. onward, serving extremely delicious lunch and dinner. All the information, as I said, jhideout.com, Johnny's Hideout STL on Facebook. Johnny's Hideout, we'll definitely see you there.
Tossing and turning over retirement worries? You're not alone. 3 out of 4 Americans share your concern about having enough saved. But here's the thing. A comfortable retirement isn't out of reach. Every day, Jeff Portman from the Gemini Wealth Group helps people avoid the critical mistakes that can derail their retirement. Build your path to financial confidence. Visit thegeminiwealthgroup.com or call Jeff directly at 314-888-0123.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.
Getting new flooring can be exciting, or it can be a hassle. To make sure you have a great experience, use Michael's Flooring, like I did. Hi, it's Susie Moore, and Michael's Flooring has become my go-to for quality, variety, and an all-around great experience. They've been locally owned and operated for more than 30 years. Carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, natural stone, luxury vinyl, it doesn't matter. Michael's Flooring is ready to help. 3 locations to pick from: St. Peter's, Darting Prairie, and Creve Coeur, or online at igotfloor.com. That's igotfloor.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
So on Monday, the U.S. Department of Defense added Chinese social media giant Tencent, as well as EV battery leader CATL, to the list of companies it says are affiliated with China's armed forces. The move does not mean immediate bans on either firm, but it does add pressure on the U.S. Treasury to introduce sanctions, and it serves as a warning to American companies that do business with them.
428 on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. And Tim, it's Thursday, and we have our favorite foreign policy and military expert on the line.
Steve Bucci, visiting fellow for Special Ops at the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, yes. What were you about to ask me? Do you expect me to talk?
Steve, welcome to the show. Before we get started, I've got to ask you, because you live up in Michigan, it's got to be much colder there than it is here in the Midwest. Make us feel good. Tell us it's 10 below there.
Not 10 below, but it was about 6 when I got up this morning. So it's the real winter has begun up here.
Yeah, we're a little warmer than that here. Steve, you heard that announcement recently that the Pentagon or the federal government has put some Chinese companies on a list that seem to be just commercial companies, but those products and applications can be used for military use. We talked with you last week how China has stopped some import of some rare earth materials that we use for our military. It's almost like we're seeing kind of a Cold War happening between the United States and China regarding rare earth minerals and things of that nature, things we need.
Yeah, it's going to be a big problem. We, the United States, have allowed China to develop essentially a monopoly over rare earth minerals, and in addition have taken us to the cleaners in economic areas. And now we're trying to address it. The Chinese know when Trump gets in office, there's going to be heck to pay for this. And so they're starting now, and apparently we are too, to make some changes. And I would say in the next couple of years, we're either going to see people change their policies, or we're going to have to adjust how we do business to address our relationship with China. If we don't, it could be problematic. So this is it's going to be pretty sporty for the next couple of years with regard to China.
Mm-hmm. Steve, what kinds of actions would you expect or possibly hope that the incoming Trump administration takes as to China? There's been talk of tariffs. There's been talk of, boning up our military presence in that part of the world, especially in and around Taiwan. What would you expect? What would you possibly hope the Trump administration will be doing in the early days regarding one of our true existential threats these days?
Well, I think they're going to start calling a spade and address China as the adversary they are. I think you will see our Pacific Command, or Asia Pacific Command, I think they call it now, forces strengthened and beefed up, because that's where that conflict, if it starts, is going to take place. I think you will see us continue and probably expand some of our freedom of navigation operations in and around China and the waters around it. You will see the tariffs that you mentioned coming up, and other economic things to try and get a more level playing field between the United States and China that we don't have right now. And the Chinese, they'll try and push back, but I think the Chinese are going to blink on this, because they understand that President Trump won't, and they're not stupid. I don't think they want war with us, but they'll push the limits. They'll stand fast for a while, but I think they're going to blink in this sort of contest of wills, if you will.
Speaking with Steve Bucci, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Steve, speaking of China, we see what they're doing in the South Pacific, trying to have hegemony there. We know the hot spots in the Middle East. Of course, there's the war between Ukraine and Russia. But we're also hearing today that the U.S. declared genocide in Sudan. That's not a country that you hear a lot about when concerning hotspots. We know there's been war and famine in that country over the years. But how serious is this declaration? And does Sudan situation cause a potential threat to our national security, with possibly Al Qaeda or the ISIS state going into that country?
I don't think Sudan right now is that big a direct threat to the United States. They have done a lot of horrible things. That's the reason, we now have a country of South Sudan, which broke away from the rest of the Sudanese nation, because in Southern Sudan, or South Sudan, they're Black Africans, not Arab Africans. But the people up in the capital are pretty darn horrific to most of their people. and they have been sort of over the top doing essentially genocidal uh, operations against their own population for a long time, which led to the split of South Sudan. But it still goes on in the rest of the country. So taking some actions against them, or at least raising the attention level against that government. I don't think it's not going to turn into an ungoverned space that Al Qaeda or ISIS can move into yet.
Okay.
But that's a possibility that we're going to need to keep track of with our intelligence and military forces going forward.
Steve, I wanted to ask you about, of course, the crisis affecting us here at home, because it has to do with our broader view on energy and the climate and national security. Of course, I'm talking about the raging wildfires in California. And Steve, it's incredibly tragic. It's incredibly horrific. But maybe it's also incredibly ironic that Joe Biden came in and the first thing he did when he was in office was basically to hamstring our energy independence by canceling the Keystone XL pipeline because of this misplaced belief in green energy new deals and climate change and so on and so forth. Steve, aren't we seeing that mismanagement now in California playing out at an epic level when these policy leaders take various things that are unproven science and apply them to the real world? It can have severe, tragic consequences, can it? And Steve, now we're going to have to spend bazillions of dollars rebuilding lives and livelihoods at a time when America's economy is not in the best place that it's been.
Yeah, look, California is the textbook case of woke politicians making decisions, running taxes, doing all sorts of DEI type hires, and thinking that it's all going to be just fine when these policies are stupid. They're horrific. They don't work. They cost way too much money. They don't provide what they promise. And as a result, the people are not prepared for things. They're worried about, the Green New Deal, which may or may not have any beneficial effect for not just decades, but like half a century. And instead, they're driving policies now in the name of that stuff that lose people jobs, lose people basic protections of the services that a government is supposed to be able to provide. And, it's an embarrassment. And California has the potential and was the richest state in the union. I mean, they got more natural resources than anybody in the whole country. They could be a separate country if they were somewhere else in the world instead of, on the west coast of the United States. But now they're a disaster. They look like a giant third world country with Gavin Newsom at the helm. It's got to stop. But the California voters put these people in office. So, I feel badly for the ones that didn't vote for them, but boy, the ones that did, they should be shaking their head or at least sending out a lot of apology letters to their neighbors who don't have homes anymore.
Steve, take this with a grain of salt, but Palestinian sources are telling Reuters that American and other mediators have brought Israel and Hamas closer to a ceasefire deal. They haven't landed one yet. What's your thoughts on that? Do you see a ceasefire there in the near future?
The one report I saw today said they thought they were moving closer and had invited the Trump team to come in to the negotiations, which I think is okay. They're not in office yet, but the Israelis at least, and apparently the Palestinians too, realize that they are the adults in the room. And once they get there, maybe they could get to some kind of place of accommodation where we can end the killing, get the hostages released. But right now, the Biden administration doesn't have as we would say in the Middle East, don't have the wasta to make it happen. They're not going to be able to convince anybody to do anything. The Israelis are not listening to them. And the Palestinians, as even Anthony Blinken admitted in a New York Times interview last week, I guess it was, that every time we put pressure on the Israelis, the Palestinians got more intractable with their demands and their unwillingness to cooperate. They did exactly the wrong things. So I hope nobody's listening to them, because that was just a disastrous policy that led to the length of this conflict thus far.
Steve, we saw the dramatic funeral procession and ceremony today for President Jimmy Carter, laying him to rest. A president that had incredible parallels with the current outgoing administration. A really terrible 4 years in office. We don't know what Joe Biden's post-presidency will be like, but Jimmy Carter, many would argue, probably correctly so, he had a much better post-presidency. But the parallels here are really, really amazing, aren't they, Steve? You have a Jimmy Carter presidency with raging inflation, trouble around the globe. Same thing with Biden. Do you think we might have the same type of thing happen, whereas in the day or days of Donald Trump and his administration taking office, we might see a release of those hostages? I've been hearing a lot of interviews with incoming Trump folks saying, Steve, they're working behind the scenes right now. It's been kind of unusual, right? It's been kind of historic to have such activity with the incoming presidency. But do you think we might see a kind of a similar development as we saw in the late 70s with the release of the Iranian hostages?
I think that's entirely possible. And let's hope that there are more parallels with that picture you've drawn, that not only do we get the hostages out of Gaza, but we get the economy to turn around, we get the military rebuilt, all those things that came. Because, who was that president that came in right after Jimmy Carter?
Ronald Reagan.
It was a guy from California.
From California, yeah.
Yeah. And, Ronald Reagan, the most conservative president we've had other than Donald Trump, lots of parallels between the two. And, one turned our country around and put it on a positive trajectory for quite a while. Maybe Donald Trump will get the opportunity to do the same thing if the Dems don't keep taking him to court and stop him from doing the policies that he'd like to pursue.
Steve, before we close up here, I want to read you a quote from Secretary Blinken. It may be from that interview that you cited earlier, but I just want to get your thoughts on this and try not to get too angry after I finish reading. This is what Secretary Blinken said regarding Israel and the Hamas war. He said, quote, "One of the things that I found a little astounding throughout is that for all the understandable criticism of the way Israel has conducted itself in Gaza, you hear virtually nothing from anyone since October 7th about Hamas. Why there hasn't been a unanimous chorus around the world for Hamas to put down its weapons, to give up the hostages, to surrender, I don't know what the answer is to that. Israel on various occasions offered safe passage to Hamas's leadership and fighters out of Gaza. Where's the world? Where's the world saying, yeah, do that, end this, stop the suffering of people you have brought on?" And it goes on a little on, but these are great words now when you've got 2 weeks left in the administration. Why wasn't he saying this over the past 2 years and being that forceful?
I think Mr. Blinken is kind of working on his legacy. Time as Secretary of State, he's hoping everybody will remember that interview and those very wise and true words, not the nonsense that he's been pushing since October 7th, 2003. And it's just a shame. If this is what Blinken really thought the whole time, why in the heck didn't he say it sooner? We would have, look, it still might not have worked, but it would have had a heck of a lot more of a chance than the policies that he was pushing from his office for the last more than a year. That's a shame. And it's gratifying to know that we're not nuts. We're actually saying that all along. But, he's been wrong and his boss has been wrong. And going back to the Carter parallel with President Biden, Carter was a much better ex-president than he was a president for sure. Joe Biden's not going to have the same thing. He's going to either just shrivel up in Delaware and we'll never see him again, or we'll see him making grossly inane statements in a continuing fashion, and people are just going to get more and more sad and pitying the man as he goes into his dotage. It's a place he's already entered a while ago, and it's a shame. The country was not well served. The Democratic Party lied to this country for pretty much all of the 4 years he was in office, and now we're still reaping the rather bitter harvest of his incompetence and the incompetence of the people who gathered around him and were able to influence him in the manner that they did. It's a shame, and hopefully President Trump and his team can get this turned around.
Well, I'm going to make a prediction. I believe that when Joe Biden leaves office here in 11 or 10 days, he is going to disappear from public, and you are gradually not going to see him anymore. And the next thing you know, and I hope he lives a long time, but the only thing you're going to hear about him is when they announce his demise. He's going to fade away from the public view, I believe. Steve, thank you so much for your time, my friend, and we look forward to catching up with you again next Thursday. Stay warm and have a great weekend.
You as well. Take care and have a great week.
Thank you, sir. All right, 4:45, and we'll have Chris's Corner. We'll catch up on some of the lawfare regarding Donald Trump. Title IX, Joe Biden was rebuked. We'll go over that again. And some other news. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Dropping truth bombs and making you think. It's the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
Don't get brazen with me.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A First Alert weather day tonight into Friday as more snow's on the way. Not as big of a storm as Sunday, but still some accumulation that can make for a Friday morning mess for the commute. Low of 27 degrees, and snow will start late evening, possibly more likely after midnight, and continue through the morning. Tapering off in the afternoon. Might still have some light snow showers, though, between noon and 3. Totals around 2 to 4 inches across St. Louis, higher to the south, less to the north. A high of 32, so some of the snow will start to melt a little bit Friday. More melting over the weekend. Partly cloudy skies both Saturday, Sunday. A high of 35 Saturday and 38 for Sunday. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Subscribe and watch your favorite News Talk STL shows. Mike Ferguson in the Morning, The Vic Porcelli Show, Columbo and Company, Jones and Arps. Webcam streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. Subscribe and watch News Talk STL.
As you heard in that forecast, the cold weather is here to stay. If you know that your furnace is acting up, this may be a good time to invest in a new one. You know, I always tell you about my friends over at Elite Comfort Experts. They don't believe in gimmicks, just guarantees. And I can guarantee that they put in a hot water heater for me, and I've known their operations manager Darren for almost 40 years. They don't inflate their prices to offer fake discounts. What you see is what you get. Honest, straightforward value. The first quarter of 2025, Elite Comfort Experts is teaming up with Amana Heating and Air Conditioning to bring you an unbeatable offer: a 99-year compressor and heat exchanger warranty, plus a 10-year parts and labor warranty on a new high-efficiency HVAC system. Call for details. That's 636-887-0971. No gimmicks, no tricks, just real peace of mind for your family. And here's the best part. Elite Comfort Experts is paying for the extended warranty out of their profits. That's right. They'll make less so you can get more. But don't wait. This exclusive offer is only available on qualifying systems installed before April 15th, 2025. Choose integrity, choose quality, choose Elite Comfort Experts. Elite Comfort Experts, no gimmicks, no, just guarantees. Again, call them at 636-887-0971 or visit EliteComfortExperts.com. Use promo code NewsTalkSTL.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on the St. Louis radio airways for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can now hear Doug and Safe Money Radio 3 times every weekend on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com. You could also reach Doug at 844-6766. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP. Member FINRA and SIPC.
Tim Jones here. For lunchtime, Capriati's cannot be beat, and I love the grilled chicken parmesan at Capriati's. I love Capriati's, and you will too.
Open 9 to 9 daily on Manchester and McKnight in Rock Hill.
Student loans can be a strain on your family. For a limited time, the Springfield, Missouri Police Department is offering qualifying new officers up to $12,500 to help ease the burden of student loans. If you're driven, honest, and team-oriented, we want to talk to you about joining our next paid police academy. Start serving your community as a leader of it with the Springfield Police Department. Visit gospd.com for more information. That's gospd.com. Brought to you by the Springfield, Missouri Police Department.
Hey, Columbo here for Rockwood Charcoal. Rockwood is made from 100% pure Missouri oak and hickory, so you're cooking with the best and supporting local industry and a local business all at once. There's over 100 area Rockwood retailers. Find yours at rockwoodcharcoal.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL.
I don't mind you coming here, wasting all my time.
Jimmy Carter. Many think he was from a bygone era, but in reality, he saw well into the future. A white Southern Baptist who led on civil rights. A decorated Navy veteran who brokered peace, a brilliant nuclear engineer who led on nuclear nonproliferation, a hardworking farmer who championed conservation and clean energy, the president who redefined the relationship with a vice president.
451 on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. And Tim, I don't know who wrote those remarks for Joe Biden. And those were some notable achievements there by ex-President Jimmy Carter. Mm-hmm. But to me, left out probably his most notable achievement, which were the Camp David Accords, where he brought Egypt and Israel together into a formal peace treaty. I think that should be probably his number one accomplishment. But Joe rattled off civil rights, and I'm like, he's not LBJ,
no,
JFK,
or MLK.
He was president in the late 70s, not in the 60s, Joe. So
as usual, off the mark.
Off the mark. Well, he was off the mark when it came to Title IX, and we'll talk about that on Chris's Corner.
Chris's Corner is brought to you by Elite Comfort Experts. Call 636-887-0971 or EliteComfortExperts.com.
Chris.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And now, Chris's Corner.
As we stated earlier, a federal judge on Thursday blocked the Biden administration's Title IX rewrite that added sexual orientation and, quote, gender identity as protected classes under the civil rights law. Tim, I would take a guess here is that the president doesn't have the power to change that. It was probably Congress would have to change Title IX. He can't do an executive order. And once again, he is rebuked by the judicial system. The highest court also in New York today rejected President-elect Donald Trump's request to stop his criminal sentencing tomorrow. All eyes now are on the Supreme Court, which will be Trump's last opportunity for an emergency intervention, and will be an interesting call here. The Supreme Court is very, they don't want to get involved in politics. They don't want to look political. Will the John Roberts Court want to get involved with this, or will they want to try to protect the institution of the presidency by not having a quote-unquote convicted felon, which will be the moniker they'll use over and over entering the White House? It'll be very interesting to see which side of the equation the Supreme Court takes with this, and if they even take up the case at all. Stephen Miller was going to have a very important space there in the Trump White House. is reportedly told Senate Republicans that the incoming Trump administration wants to roll out 100 executive orders, particularly focused on restricting immigration, which is a good thing. The top items are the reinstatement of Title 42. That blocks many asylum seekers under public health authority. Tapping 287G, that allows local law enforcement to work more with ICE, and building migrant detention facilities on the border wall. That's going to be one of the top 100 executive orders the president will sign in the first few days of his office. It was also announced today, Tim, the Justice Department said it released only part of Special Counsel Jack Smith's report, the findings about Donald Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. This comes on the heels of Judge Eileen Cannon, who said that report could not be released. So I guess they are releasing something that's highly redacted,
of course,
and something that's still going to paint him as guilty, but probably skirts right around the edges of obeying the judge's order. And boy, a lot of sad notes in the publishing media business today. Yesterday, we read that the Post Disgrace will no longer be publishing their paper downtown after like 177 years. That production will be going to Columbia. They announced that with this new setup, don't expect late night scores and other changes to the paper. And it's almost like, why are you even publishing at all? Just go straight online. What use is a paper getting the paper? And I know not everybody loves sports. So what use is getting a paper with sports in the morning that is not updated? And the latest mainstream media generated controversy. Remember, Donald Trump, of course, said jokingly he'd like to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Well, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, she has responded to him. She said that she wants to rename part of the U.S. America Mexicana. So we've got a war. I guess she's probably talking about the Southwest Missouri. Southwest
Missouri, yeah.
Southwest Missouri. I guess Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and California. She wants to rename America Mexicana. So the war of words there between the two presidents is very, very interesting. And that is Chris's Corner for January 9th, 2025.
You know, if you look at a map of the U.S., most of that body of water known as the Gulf of Mexico borders the United States and not Mexico.
But here's the interesting...
I was wondering, how did it become the Gulf of Mexico in the first place?
That's what I wanted to know. That's what I was just about to say. That's a very interesting question. How do some of these bodies of water get their names? Maybe it was somebody out there is a genius with that type of stuff and knows that.
Stretches from South Florida all the way across a number of states down to South Texas. It's a big amount of frontage.
Maybe that's when Mexico was a major country or something. And there were only Native Americans here.
I believe it.
Who knows? All right. 5:07, we'll have the speaker's stump speech.
Yes. Trump's accomplishments pre-president.
And then we'll have freshman Congressman Dr. Bob Onder. We'll talk about the Laken-Riley Act, which seems like it will be the first act signed into law. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
Larry Connors here. I'm heading to southern Italy on a tour of the most beautiful coastline in the world, the Amalfi Coast. 11 magical days in luxury with professionals from Conservative Tours. The cost, $54.88. That includes airfare from St. Louis. Call 888-733-9494 or go to conservativetours.com. Let's go to Italy this spring. conservativetours.com.
Are you a St. Louis small business owner looking to boost your brand? Blue Ocean Media Group offers affordable video production that packs a punch. From social media content to branded promotional clips, we'll help you stand out in the digital crowd. Professional quality, small business prices. Let's tell your story together. Learn more at blueomg.com. That's blueomg.com. Blue Ocean Media, big impact videos for small business budgets.
Looking for an underwater adventure or a scaly new friend? Dive into Tropical World Pets on Watson Road. For 32 years, this family-owned wonderland has been St. Louis's go-to destination for all things aquatic and reptilian. With over 7,000 square feet of aquariums, we're home to the area's largest selection of freshwater fish, including rare cichlids you won't find anywhere else. But that's not all. We've got tarantulas, snakes, and lizards galore. Tropical World Pets, 314-849-4020, or visit twpstl.com.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness 101. Wellness 101 is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense, science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on News Talk STL. For more information, visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Belfast, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters. House and Senate Republicans are crafting plans to fast-track key legislation in President-elect Donald Trump's first 100 days. On the Salem Media Group program this week on the Hill with Tony Perkins, House Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana says his priority is passing legislation based on the mandate voters gave the GOP.
Elections have consequences, and we now have unified government. So we have Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate and the White House. So we are going to take full advantage of that and really pass very important common sense legislation. That's sort of the guiding principle. We have to return to common sense. That's the first step. These are good pieces of legislation. There'll be many more in the days ahead.
Speaker Johnson's complete interview will be broadcast on This Week on the Hill on radio stations nationwide this weekend, and also starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time this Saturday on the Salem News Channel. Firefighters are battling to control major fires in the Los Angeles area. At least 5 people have died, while some 180,000 residents are under evacuation orders for all blazes in the county.
In Palisades Village, one resident's home was untouched by flames. Dylan Vincent returned to the neighborhood where he's lived most of his life to retrieve some items before evacuating again.
The community rallying together. I know everyone's been on the phone texting about how we're going to come back from this.
Fierce winds that drove flames earlier this week have calmed somewhat and aren't expected to be as powerful. I'm Haya Panjwani.
Authorities are just beginning to calculate the toll. Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley says the Palisades fire along the coast burned thousands of structures, and cadaver dogs and search crews are searching the rubble for more victims. Markets were closed today for the National Day of Mourning for President Carter. More at townhall.com.
You've heard me talk about Relief Factor and how so many people enjoy a better, more pain-free life because of it. If you're dealing with everyday pain, it makes sense you'd want to try it first. Well, Relief Factor makes that pretty pain-free too with their 3-week quick start kit for only $19.95, less than $1 a day. Relief Factor is a daily supplement that fights pain naturally. Relief Factor doesn't just mask pain temporarily, it helps reduce or eliminate pain. Visit relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF, 800-4RELIEF for Relief Factor.
You know, a lot of times you have to choose between something high quality or something that saves you money, but if you can get both, why not? Especially when it comes to healthcare, and that's MediShare. You get both. The typical family saves $500 a month and they love it. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. So yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Call now. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Call 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A First Alert weather day tonight into Friday as more snow's on the way. Not as big of a storm as Sunday, but still some accumulation that can make for a Friday morning mess for the commute. Low of 27 degrees, and snow will start late evening, possibly more likely after midnight, and continue through the morning. Tapering off in the afternoon. Might still have some light snow showers, though, between noon and 3. Totals around 2 to 4 inches across St. Louis, higher to the south, less to the north. A high of 32, so some of the snow will start to melt a little bit Friday. More melting over the weekend. Partly cloudy skies both Saturday, Sunday. A high of 35 Saturday and 38 for Sunday. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Jewels on Hampton and St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches on site. Jewels on Hampton is a premier jeweler featuring Alvanza's jewel art designs with an exquisite selection of diamonds, semi-precious stone jewelry, and vintage watches. Their expert design team can restyle your jewelry to today's contemporary style. They also do jewelry and watch repair. Need extra cash? Jewels on Hampton is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches. Bring in your collectibles and clocks and sports memorabilia and figurines too. Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton, just 3 blocks south of Chippewa, and jewelsonhampton.com. Call them at 314-752-5000, 314-752-5000, and jewelsonhampton.com. Jewels on Hampton.
All the information I need on the drive to work.
Mike Ferguson in the morning. I keep it on throughout the day, whether it's local, national, or something big that's happening overseas.
News, analysis, and opinion.
St. Louis is #1 for conservative talk.
News Talk STL.
You know, at the beginning of the year, good time to get all your affairs in order, including your legal affairs. Have you been putting that off? Don't put it off any longer. Come on, it's already the 9th day of January. Time for you to make an appointment with Civia Law. Todd Civia and the fantastic folks at Civia Law standing by to help you with all of life's challenges and transitions and preparations, right? Going to a lawyer doesn't have to be for a bad situation. It can be for a positive thing, like making sure that your legacy is preserved, protect things from Uncle Sam, make sure it all goes to your kids instead of the government. I'm talking about estate planning. Todd Civia and Civia Law do a ton of estate planning, every aspect of estate planning, trust and estates, wills, probate, whatever you may need. They've also got some awesome online forms to help you get the process started in the comfort of your home. Elder law and special needs care. They specialize in those niche areas as well. We're always talking about being in the sandwich generation, right? A lot of those folks are in and around my age, maybe the decade before, decade after. Maybe you're taking care of parents, maybe you're taking care of kids, maybe you're taking care of both. They can help you with all of that at Civia Law as well. Real estate transactions and business matters. Yes, they specialize as well. They specialize in these key critical areas: estate planning, elder law, special needs, real estate, and businesses. Yes. That's why so many of you who I know listen to us who are in the small business world, small, medium-sized business world, whether you work for one or whether you own one, Civia Law can take care of all those aspects that you need as well. And finally, you veterans, they specialize in veterans benefits. There's a ton of veterans benefits out there that are available that many vets don't even know exists. So you can call Todd Civia and Civia Law for that as well. 833-995-WILL, 833-995-WILL. Or you can look them up and view all their practice areas, their online forms, and more at civialaw.com, SIVIA, civialaw.com. Civia Law, helping you through all of life's challenges and transitions. civialaw.com. That's civialaw.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps brought to you by Window World. Simply the best for less. 314-993-1800 or visit windowworld.com. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
I mean, the reality is migration was a disaster. Immigration was a disaster for 3.5 years, and they tried to window dress it for the last 6 months. Inflation was a disaster for all 4 years. The economy is not working for most people. That's why Democrats lost the election, and that's why they're going back to Trump.
Democrats lost the election. Nobody's arguing that. What we are saying, though, is that prices are going down. What I am saying is murder rates.
Going down.
They actually are going down. Murder
inflation
rates.
Inflation is still
plateauing.
It is decreasing in rate, which is the entire goal.
But
of
are
the
prices
Federal
going
Reserve.
down or not? Just to be clear. No. Yeah, you guys are trying to paint a picture of a country that doesn't exist.
I'm not painting anything. I'm painting. Stop talking.
Scott Jennings owns CNN, doesn't he, Chris Arps? I mean, those panelists, he's 1 versus 3, and he always comes out on top because they either don't know what they're talking about or people know that they're basically lying about what they're talking about.
Yeah, facts are always going to trump rhetoric and emotion. He does that time and time again. How you can try to argue that this was a good economy under Biden, to say that prices are going down when I brought home a meal from Wendy's for me and my wife the other day, and it was $30. Prices are not coming down. Maybe the growth of inflation, as they said, but actual prices are not going down. And part of the reason they lost their messaging, well, that type of messaging where you look like you're in denial, didn't help them at all.
It's Baghdad Bob stuff, right?
Exactly.
You know, it's like, there's or the guy. For those who don't remember Baghdad Bob, for our younger listeners, that was Saddam Hussein's comms guy standing in front of the Saddam Hussein palace as it was being blown up by the Allied forces, saying there's nothing to see here, there's no tanks around. Or for our younger folks, the CNN reporter standing in front of the burning car in Kenosha, Wisconsin. These are mostly peaceful riots. So, Chris, you're right. Scott Jennings, once again, giving them a lesson in Econ 101. Over the last 4 years under Joe Biden, prices for everything went up anywhere from 20 to 100%, depending on what good or service you're talking about. And as you just said, Chris, even though the rate of inflation has slowed, those prices have not gone back down to pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, and you can't talk about a good economy, and I forgot what poll this is, but it said here more than 770,000 people, that's almost 1 million people, were homeless on a single night in January 2024, according to this survey. That includes nearly 150,000 children, reflecting a 33% increase over 2023. Black people were 32% of the homeless population, despite making up 12% of the total U.S. population. That's down from 37% in 2023. And veterans reported continued declines in homelessness, down 8%. So you can't say that the economy is great and everything is roses when you have facts and statistics like this.
Yep. That's a perfect example. And a very simple example is think about what it costs to fill up your car now versus 4 years ago. When Donald Trump left office, January of 2021, the general price per gallon, the median price per gallon in the country was around $1.80. It's now around $2.80. So it's 30% more, right? It's 30% more. So if it used to cost you $30 to fill up your tank, it's now costing you $40 or more every single time. You multiply that out over however many times you fill up your car every month, times 12, you're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more on gas. And Chris, I bet people's wages did not go up correspondingly.
Yeah, not only gas. Becky went to the grocery store the other day and she told me, guess how much the few bags of groceries that I bought, guess how much that cost. And she told me, and I, it was almost kind of these, you're kidding me, but I was kind of like, yeah, I expected it to be not that, be extravagant because of inflation. So yeah, I don't know where they're living, where prices are going down. And maybe if you make the type of incomes that they do, that price hikes, price shocks don't bother you. But for the average American, what we've experienced the last 4 years is something you don't forget.
Suzanne gives me the same speech every month because I ask her every month, where's all the money gone? And look, we're very blessed. I'm not complaining at all about my lot in life. We're very lucky to be on this station and have a lot of other projects that we handle. But, putting a daughter through college, got another one coming. There's a lot to, in our little household, there's a lot of expenditures, with 4 people. And I say the same thing. Where's it all gone? Yeah. And then Chris, she pulls out the grocery bill. She goes, you want to know where a big chunk of it's gone? Look at how much it costs to feed a family of 4 these days when the older daughter, Katie, who's a very active runner, is home. And I go, holy Toledo,
And I remember there for a while, I don't know if it's still the case, but food prices were so high at the grocery stores that it was actually cheaper to go to a restaurant and eat than actually buying food and cooking it. And that was always the rule of thumb, especially when you're a single guy and you got an apartment, buy some groceries and cook food. Don't go to fast food places and restaurants. But it had gotten to the point. It was upside down. It was cheaper to go to a restaurant than to, cook food at home.
It is indeed. Welcome back to the program. Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. It is about to become, about 5:14 in the PM Central Standard Time. Chris, we just heard that there is, unfortunately, another winter storm warning in effect from tonight at 6 p.m. until tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Here's the basic forecast we're hearing from our partners at Channel 4, and you can find this pretty much everywhere. Snow tonight, mainly after 3 a.m., up to about an inch possible. Snow during the day tomorrow until about 2 p.m. Total snow accumulations of anywhere between 2 and 4 inches on top of all the snow and ice that's still lingering in the Show Me State and in the greater Midwest as a whole.
Joey, maybe you and I can room tonight in the hotel. I'll bring the Monopoly board. Or you want to play Pinochle?
Oh, of course.
Joey, are you a regular across the street at this point?
You got points?
I do, yeah. I'm
You
a
get points?
Marriott man. It's crazy what hasn't been moved out of these merging lanes. If you want to get off of Page to come here, the lane just doesn't exist. There's just a slight opening in a 6-foot gap of snow that you have to get in there real quick.
I almost died today merging onto the highway because you're right. It was like 100 yards. And I was like, and it just ends. And if you don't merge, you're going to crash into an ice bank. Yeah, that's going to be the India. So the shows will go on, though. Don't worry. We'll either be here live or remotely. And right now, I think we're planning on being here live. Hopefully, this will be a non-event. It'll be a light event. But, folks, just so you know, if you're out late tonight or if you got the overnight shift or you're hoping to get to the office early in the morning, you could be dealing with some slick stuff with the white stuff and with road conditions that could potentially be hazardous. Just want you to know that I think none of us were thinking there was going to be another snow event this quickly, but there is. And I think we're going to get the lighter aspect of it. As this thing heads east, it's supposed to pick up speed and maybe hammer the Atlantic coast again. So if you're traveling to the east over the next few days, you better make sure that you are prepared. Chris, we've got Bob Onder coming up. We're going to talk to him again because he's been a busy bee. He was involved, of course, in passing the Lincoln Riley Act. I know illegal immigration is something Bob's worked on for decades in the State House. He's now working on it in the U.S. Congress. And Chris, what are you going to ask Bob generally? What do you want to know about after 1 week in Congress? What are we going to talk about?
I guess I want to ask him, the big brouhaha is, will there be 1 or 2 reconciliation bills? The president has decided, it's been reported that he wants one quote unquote big, beautiful bill. But then we're hearing reports that he's saying he's kind of ambivalent, whatever can get passed. If 2 bills is the case, I'll go with that. But initially he's with the 1 bill. So ask him his thoughts and where does he think it should go? 1 or 2 bills.
Excellent inquiry indeed. So, Chris, I was watching these pictures of Southern California over your shoulder on the monitors here. Unbelievable.
That's what hell would probably look like when I see stuff like that.
You know what it reminds me of? Joey, I want to ask you this too. Joey, did you ever see, where Joey? Oh, there he is. Joey, did you ever see the movie The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington?
Yeah, even I've seen that. Yeah.
So
it's like, yeah, even I've seen it.
First of all, a bit of a cult classic movie. The critics panned it a little bit. I thought was it because it was about theology and God and religion?
I think so. It was very specific, talking about Christianity.
Denzel was freaking awesome. He was badass in that movie. And I won't give away the ending. It's a huge surprise at the even though the movie's been out forever, there's a huge surprise at the ending. And now when you know the surprise and you go back and watch it, you're like, oh, yeah.
Speaking of religion, I saw this on Facebook last week. Denzel, a couple weeks ago, was baptized and has become a ordained minister.
No way.
In the Pentecostal church. He's always been kind of religious and talked about his Christianity, and now he's going to start preaching. He tells a story, and his mother used to be a beautician. And I'll make it a short story. Sure. But one of his mother's clients, she was known as kind of being a person that could prophesy and tell the future. And she prophesied one Saturday when he came home from college, he wasn't doing very well, that he was going to do something where he was going to speak to the world and talk and touch the world by his work and what he did. And he's won 2 Oscars, and you see what he's done. It kind of came true.
I'm a huge Denzel fan. Yeah, I'm a big fan. And that Book of Eli movie, I hate to say it. That's what Southern California looks like. It reminds me of that movie. That movie was it was post-apocalyptic, and you get the sense, they never tell you what happened, but everything's basically burned. It looks like nuclear holocaust. It's probably what it was. That's what it looks like. It's that bad in Southern California. Just god-awful.
It never rains in Southern California. Join those, that song. California.
Great movie, Book of Eli. Check it out. Chris, big headline today. You talked about Mayor Karen Bass. Chris, you're not going to believe last month, she bragged to her constituents about building a greener LA. So much for that promise.
It's going to be a blacker LA, and
Horrible.
not because of the population, because of the char.
Just absolutely god-awful indeed.
Incompetence.
Hey, we talked coming in, Scott Jennings schooling the CNN crew once again over the failure of Joe Biden and the promise of Donald Trump. Chris and I were been talking about this often. We don't remember an incoming president-elect having this much power and influence before he's even taken the oath of office. It's been 2 months added to the presidency. As Chris pointed out, he's going to get 4 years and 2 months, basically. Why does that matter, and what effect has he had on what things? We're going to talk about that in today's Speaker Stump Speech.
Listen to me. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
It's time for the Speaker Stump Speech, sponsored by Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com.
And even the D.C. publications that tend to sort of love big government and tend to kind of oftentimes move to the left, they're even noticing it, and they're pointing it out. This article from Axios, Behind the Curtain, Trump's ever-expansive power. President-elect Trump, whose power was immense, Axios says, after his comeback win, enhanced by the coming full Republican control of Congress, has expanded that power substantially in the 9 weeks since his victory, and he hasn't even been sworn into office yet. Why does it matter? Well, it's rare, if not unprecedented, for a newly elected leader to have so many world leaders, as Chris just mentioned, and CEOs shift their policies or their posture so blatantly during the transition to curry favor with the new president. Trump will start his presidency with a very loyal GOP Senate and House, unlike the last time around, a vastly empowered MAGA-friendly media, unlike the last time around, businesses scrambling to make amends or further improve cozy relationships, unlike the last time around, and massive amounts of money fastly flowing into his inauguration committees, his campaign committees, and his family's business endeavors. Remember last time they wanted to shut down Trump World. They wanted to eradicate it. They wanted to remove it. Now everybody seems to be bending the knee. It's largely because, as Chris and I have also talked about, the Democratic opposition they're still dazed. They're like walking around in a fog. They're weak. They're largely powerless. They don't know what they're talking about. The American people have largely rejected them, although Republicans' tiny margin in the House, that's going to be a constant concern and threat to Trump world indeed. I'm not saying the Democrats are down and out and you're never going to see the Democratic Party again. Folks, this is all cyclical. If the Republicans don't deliver on all these promises that they made and it's not promises kept, then the voters who are fickle are going to maybe make different decisions 2 years from now, which is why it's so important that Republicans get down to business and deliver as they have been doing so far. Last 2 short months, major tech CEOs have traveled to meet Trump in person. They've cut $1 million checks to his inauguration committee. Meta, Facebook, shifted top personnel and even its own policies to match Trump interests. With the news media more fractured and less trusted than ever, outlets that once covered Trump with skepticism have made surprise overtures to the president-elect. The Democrats' post-2016 resistance movement, well, it's non-existent, and it's in complete disarray wherever you can find it. Where's the squad? You haven't heard from AOC or Jemiah Paul much. 2 of the squad members, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, were sent packing by voters, so they're not able to kind of be the tip of the spear. Internationally, foreign allies, longtime liberal foreign allies from Canada to Britain to Germany, have now sort of said, we need to address this immigration issue in our countries as well. And Donald Trump, we're looking for advice. 2 billionaire CEOs have announced huge U.S. investments to help kick off Donald Trump's press conferences recently at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump's talking about purchasing Greenland, making Canada the 51st state, and getting back the Panama Canal. Those things may not exactly happen. You know what Trump always does? He starts with a very big hyperbolic statement, and then he ends up getting something out of the equation. I don't believe Canada is going to be the 51st state, but you know what? Maybe they'll be a little more helpful when it comes to illegal immigration on our northern border and those types of issues, maybe with energy. I don't know that we're going to buy Greenland, but maybe they will become more of an ally, very important in that Arctic corridor. And as far as the Panama Canal goes, Donald Trump's pointing out that China has become a huge threat in the southern hemisphere, and that's what he's pushing back for. You always got to look in these layers of the onion, everything that Trump is talking about. Finally, the Trump effect in the Middle East, importantly, extends well beyond Israel. Iran is trying to keep a very low profile. They've shelved a retaliation plan against the Jewish people in the Israeli state. They've signaled several times it wants to negotiate a new nuclear deal, and they're uncharacteristically staying out of the presidential election that's occurring this week in Lebanon. Finally, putting the money where the mouth is, Donald Trump has raised a record $170 million for his inauguration. With so much still coming in that VIP events are over capacity and sold out, some donors have taken the unusual step of offering donations as high as $1 million without receiving anything in return. So grudgingly reports the New York Times. And that's the Speaker's stump speech for today. Unprecedented, like he always is.
You know, presidents normally have a honeymoon period, and Donald Trump is going to have a honeymoon period as well. But in the first 6 months of his presidency, there's going to be a high drama moment, and it's regarding these reconciliation bills. President and leadership want a hike in the debt ceiling limit. There are Republicans that are in the caucus that have never voted for a debt ceiling hike. They will never vote for a debt ceiling hike. And it'll be just interesting to see how is that impasse going to be resolved. Because if you have any Democrats come across and help with this, you're a sellout, you're a rhino. How in the world are they going to get past this impasse?
Well, we're going to ask our next guest that question and much more. He's one of our favorite newly minted congressmen, Congressman Bob Onder. He's going to join us next on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
Everything woke turns to shit, okay?
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A First Alert weather day tonight into Friday as more snow's on the way. Not as big of a storm as Sunday, but still some accumulation that can make for a Friday morning mess for the commute. Low of 27 degrees, and snow will start late evening, possibly more likely after midnight, and continue through the morning. Tapering off in the afternoon. Might still have some light snow showers, though, between noon and 3. Totals around 2 to 4 inches across St. Louis, higher to the south, less to the north. A high of 32, so some of the snow will start to melt a little bit Friday. More melting over the weekend. Partly cloudy skies both Saturday, Sunday. A high of 35 Saturday and 38 for Sunday. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
The Right Mind Show with Todd Showalter.
Hey everybody, it's your buddy Todd Showalter. Join me and my buddy Joey V for The Right Mind Show, when we put the fun in our dysfunctional world.
The Right Mind Show with Todd Showalter. Saturday evenings at 5 on News Talk STL.
We are entering home selling season. That's what happens every late winter and early spring all across the land, and that's no different here in the Show Me State and in the St. Louis region and beyond. The Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway, Rodney and Jen Wallner, they're standing by to assist you if you've made that decision, or if you're even thinking about it, you should call them at 314-810-SOLD. Look, even if you haven't decided to sell your home specifically, but you're thinking about selling your home, even if you just want information about the real estate industry, Rodney and Jen Wallner are the nicest real estate agents around, and I would argue the most accomplished and competent. They've been doing it for decades. They're not weekend warriors. This is not like their fifth gig to make a little extra spending cash. They are steeped in the real estate industry. It's what they do. It's what they do full time, 7 days a week, 365, and they've been doing it for decades. They've been with us here at News Talk STL since the very beginning. We thank them so much for that, and we're excited that they're continuing their relationship into 2025 and, of course, beyond. They're going to offer you a flexible commission plan for your family-specific needs, not a cookie-cutter model. It will have the all-important, no obligation, no long-term commitment clause in it. Anytime your situation changes, you can walk away, no questions asked. They have so many approved home buyers, they're going to guarantee to obtain you an offer when you call them at 314-810-SOLD. They're licensed in both Missouri and Illinois. They're, of course, a husband and wife team. That means you get two for the price of one. They both have their sweet spot as far as the different knowledge bases they focus on. They're prolific. They're ubiquitous. They know everything there is about real estate in Eastern Missouri and in Western Illinois. And that's why you should get this team on your side today. By calling them for a free listing consultation, you will sell your home with this top producing real estate team of Rodney and Jen Wallner. 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
True story. I was with Jay Ackerman, and a waitress came up and began praising Ackerman Toyota. She was afraid she might need a new car, so she had gone to Ackerman and was told, you don't really need a new car, just new tires. Obviously, tremendously relieved and thanking Jay over and over. Another example where Ackerman Toyota did what's right for her and will for you. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life.
Sievers JCB, a trusted leader in agriculture and construction. Connect with SieversJCB.com and browse their inventory or stop by and let them show you the capabilities of the JCB lineup. Telebooms, skid steers, loaders, forklifts, excavators, backhoes, and more. JCB has pushed diesel to its limits with machines that now emit 50% less CO2. JCB's new Icon software system will blow your mind, offering iConfigure, iConnect, and iControl. Learn more at SieversJCB.com.
Sievers JCB is proud to be the heavy equipment partner of Monster Jam. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at Stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Like us on Facebook at News Talk STL.
President-elect Donald Trump certainly made immigration and border security a key theme and often referenced this case about Laken Riley, of the Georgia nursing student who was murdered late last year. The undocumented immigrant who was convicted has since been sentenced. And so from this standpoint, this legislation would essentially make it easier for ICE, federal law enforcement, to detain undocumented immigrants, particularly for theft-related crimes.
Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. Let's dig a little deeper into that recently passed act by the U.S. House, find out its prospects in the U.S. Senate, and more with our next guest, our specialist in the swamp. He is Dr. Bob Onder, newly minted congressman from our listening region, representing huge parts of St. Charles County and points westward and southward. Dr. Bob, welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining Chris and I today.
It is really great to be back. Thanks, Tim.
Bob, it's so great to see the U.S. House getting going on its basically second day of session this year and immediately passing the Laken Riley Act. Bob, take us into the negotiations around that. The fact that a lot of Democrats, would have been nice to have all of them, a lot of Democrats join in a bipartisan fashion. And most importantly, what will this act do if approved by the Senate and signed by the president?
Yeah, Tim. Well, the Laken Riley Act, H.R. 29, is a really important piece of legislation sponsored by Congressman Mike Collins. And it's, as your lead-in said, named after Laken Riley, a 22-year-old Georgia nursing student who was really brutally murdered by an illegal alien, Jose Ibarra. And of course, like so many such perpetrators, Ibarra should not have been in the United States, first of all, because he was violating immigration law, but also he had a rap sheet. And that rap sheet included mostly property crimes, so-called, theft, larceny. So the Laken Riley Act would really do two very important things. One, it would add theft, larceny, burglary to the crimes for which ICE would be required to detain and deport illegal aliens. But just as important, the Laken Riley Act also gives states a cause of action to sue federal officials who refuse to do their job and enforce immigration law. And that lawsuit can include injunctive relief, where a judge would then force that official to do their job in securing our border and deporting illegals. So a very big victory. Yes, 49 Democrats joined all the Republicans in passing that bill. I think even the Democrats got the message from November 5th's election.
Congressman, one of the objectives that the Democrats offered on this was that a so-called dreamer could get caught up in this and be deported if they were convicted or arrested for a theft.
Well, again, there's this stereotype of dreamers as being someone brought to our country by 2-year-olds, but some of them were in their late teens when they came into our country, and they knew better. They knew they were breaking the law. But look, I have no problem with prioritizing who we deport, but criminal illegal aliens need to be deported. They've already committed one crime. They've already committed the crime of illegally entering our country. And just because you committed that crime a long time ago, I don't really care. And I don't think the American people care. They need to be deported. So now you, on top of committing the crime of violating our immigration laws, you're also committing crimes within the United States for which you've been arrested, charged, convicted. It's time for those folks to go. And a lot of other illegal aliens need to go as well. I think the Lake and Riley Act does start to set our priorities. And remember, a lot of the people who commit violent crimes, murder, rape, armed robbery, they commit property crimes too. Let's identify those folks early, get them the heck out of our country so they won't victimize more Americans.
Congressman, what does it mean to the national discussion on this issue of illegal immigration that you did have a significant number of Democrats cross the aisle and join Republicans on this? Although, how insane is it that 157 Democrats still voted against it? And tell us what its chances are in your mind in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, I think our chances are really good in the U.S. Senate. This is the first time in U.S. history that the Republicans have had a larger margin of larger majority in the U.S. Senate than the U.S. House. So I suspect every Republican in the U.S. Senate will vote for the Lake and Riley Act. And as Senator Fetterman said just a couple of nights ago, if we can't get at least 7 Democrats to vote for the Lake and Riley Act, they have not learned their lesson from November 5th. So I think even some common sense Democrats will vote with us in the U.S. Senate.
And Congressman Katie Britt, the senator from Alabama that's sponsoring that bill with Fetterman, she has announced today that it is filibuster proof now. So apparently 7 Democrats have committed to voting for this, and I think they're going to take it up tomorrow and should be passed by Congress tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great news, and of course, we know what will happen when it gets to President Trump's desk. So it'll be a great day. Of course, we'll swear in Donald Trump on Monday. It's just really exciting.
Congressman, I want to ask you, and the big talk there in Washington is 1 reconciliation bill or 2. Our own Jason Smith wants 1 bill. The speaker wants 1 bill. Donald Trump seems to want 1 big, beautiful bill, but we're also hearing reports that if 2 bills are what's necessary to get this passed, he is amenable to that. One of the things that's going to be in this reconciliation bill is a rise in the debt ceiling. And Speaker Johnson has a very slim majority. He's going to need every Republican to vote for that. But there are Republicans who have never voted for a debt increase and said they never will. Do you see an impasse coming in the coming months?
Yeah, you, Chris, have identified the hurdles to passing a big, beautiful bill or 2 big, beautiful bills. And those are that it sounds simple enough to renew the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, but there are some tricky components here. I think the case for renewing the debt ceiling, which the president I know would like to do, and some others in the House and Senate would like to do, the case is to get that done Along with the rest of the reconciliation bill, so that Democrats won't have leverage over the Trump administration and Republicans later on. But as you said, a lot of Republicans have never voted for a debt ceiling increase. This is the way I see it. Most fiscal conservatives, when they say I won't vote for a debt ceiling, say that their price for voting for a debt ceiling increase is significant cuts to spending, cuts that bend the curve to reduce our deficit and our debt. And I think that is really what leadership and what the House and the Senate need to work on, is significant cuts that both pay for the Trump tax cuts, but also that cut into other mandatory and discretionary spending items, so we are not continuing to rack up debt for our children and our grandchildren. It's unacceptable that in the last year our debt has risen by $2 trillion. 16 years ago our debt was $3 trillion. It's now $36 trillion. That's over $100,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. That's got to stop.
So Congressman Onder, to follow up on that point, as you know from your House and Senate days here on the state side, there are plenty of people on both sides of the aisles. It doesn't seem to matter what letter they have after the name, that are big government elected officials, Republican or Democrat. And it seems like many of them think that the checkbook's never going to run out. It's not their checkbook anyway. So we'll just keep spending, especially on the federal level, right, Bob, where there's a printing press available and you don't have to balance a budget. Bob, is there a realization? I don't know if the Democrats are a lost cause or not on this issue. Maybe some of them aren't. Is there a realization amongst your colleagues? And I know you only been there for, barely a week, but that we've got to get a handle on this debt load, which is becoming, and many believe, a national security concern.
Absolutely. I think more and more, I don't know whether there are any Democrats who aren't lost causes on the spending issue. You just don't run into many conservative Democrats when it comes to spending. But there are places where we could really make good policy and save a ton of money at the same time. Medicaid work requirements, for instance, could save $160 billion over the next 10 years. Clawing back Green New Deal subsidies and electric vehicle mandates could save $200 billion over the next 10 years. There are unspent COVID stimulus funds of about $20 billion. These are, honestly, if you have any ounce of fiscal conservatism, or if you care that people on welfare ought to be given the dignity of work and supporting their family, these are easy things to me. But there are too many go along, get along Republicans and Democrats who don't have the appetite to cut spending. But I think that is the needle that we're going to need to thread. Are we going to be able to save enough money to pay for the Trump tax cuts? And I always hate to talk about paying for tax cuts, because after all, tax cuts are just allowing you to keep more of your money. But to avoid the filibuster rules in the Senate and the business with the parliamentarian and all that, we do, and also for fiscal sanity, this is an opportunity to make real cuts to spending and start to bring down the deficit.
Congressman, I want to get your thoughts today as a medical doctor on a federal judge blocking President Biden's Title IX rewrite that added sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes under the civil rights law.
Yes. Absolutely no one believes that when the Civil Rights Act was written, that any of the drafters or the people who voted for it in the House or the Senate or the president ever thought sexual identity or gender orientation or sexual identity was intended by that law. And so the irony has become that the Biden administration tried to force this bureaucrat-written, radical activist-written policy down the throats of Americans through Title IX. And so, regarding in the world of college athletics, ironically, a law that was intended to help protect women's sports was being used to destroy women's sports, to destroy women's privacy and personal safety at their universities. So it's a huge victory that the judge today issued a nationwide injunction against enforcement of Biden's Title IX idiocy. And of course, come January 20th, Donald Trump will reverse all this stuff and will be restored to sanity. But we, Chris, need to put this in the statute books so that this doesn't happen again with a future administration. And that very likely will be one of the many bills that I file this session.
Excellent.
Excellent update indeed from Missouri's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman Bob Onder, you can find him on the official side at Rep. Bob Onder on Twitter X or at Bob Onder Mo. And Bob, where is the office? How do people find you if they're heading to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. Well, we are in Longworth House Office Building, 1113. We will be. We actually still have some tickets to inauguration. So if any of your listeners have, called Senators Hawley and Schmidt and they're out of tickets, we still do have some. But if anyone wants to stop by either Friday, or we're also going to open the office between noon and 4 on Saturday before the inauguration, just contact our office. We'd love to see you.
Fantastic. Onder.house.gov. Onder.house.gov. Congressman Bob, thanks so much for the time. We'll look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Chris. Have a great evening.
Indeed. Well, he's hit the ground running.
He is.
Sounds like he knows exactly what he's talking about on everything we asked him.
And there is a lot to hit the ground running to know about. Like I said, there is a dilemma that is coming up in the next 4 months, and it's one of those Gordian knot situations. I don't know how you resolve it because if you do some of the cut and spending, Tim, you're going to lose some of the moderate Republicans because they want some of that spending. So it's going to be a tricky juggling match.
We will see what Speaker Johnson does to thread the needle, and will he get Democrats to jump on board like he did with the Laken Riley Act? We will find out indeed ahead. 5:45 in the PM. Chris, you mentioned a couple things that were on your mind for our final segment.
Yeah, something to play around with. Jimmy Carter lived to be 100 years old, and what if some of our other presidents had lived to 100? Some of the things they may have witnessed in history, and some of the presidents who would have eulogized them. So that'd be an interesting exercise in what if.
Fascinating. Very cool indeed. We'll talk about that. We'll prepare you for Larry Connor's USA at 6 o'clock. The Allman Report with Jamie Allman. At 8 o'clock, there's lots more straight ahead. Keep it right here. Don't touch that dial. 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL.
Just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A First Alert weather day tonight into Friday as more snow's on the way. Not as big of a storm as Sunday, but still some accumulation that can make for a Friday morning mess for the commute. Low of 27 degrees, and snow will start late evening, possibly more likely after midnight, and continue through the morning. Tapering off in the afternoon. Might still have some light snow showers, though, between noon and 3. Totals around 2 to 4 inches across St. Louis, higher to the south, less to the north. A high of 32, so some of the snow will start to melt a little bit Friday. More melting over the weekend. Partly cloudy skies both Saturday, Sunday. A high of 35 Saturday and 38 for Sunday. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Danny Define here, host of the all-new show, The Next Gen, with me, Danny Define. We're going to cover all the hard-hitting topics on the show. From national headlines to things happening right here in St. Louis.
Next Gen with Danny Define. Sunday nights at 8.
Right here on News Talk STL.
Hey, this is Chris Arps, and if one of your New Year's resolutions is to find a locally owned, full-service, independent community bank, I've got the bank just for you. Royal Banks of Missouri. They have some of the highest financial ratings in St. Louis for stability and strength, and they've been around since 1960, so you know they're not going anywhere. They offer 17 convenient banking locations throughout St. Louis, St. Charles, across the river in Granite City and Jerseyville, Illinois. And for our 94.1 listeners up in Northeast Missouri, in Hannibal and Rawls County. Royal Banks also have over 200 ATMs across the Midwest to give you free access to ATM transactions and withdrawals. And Royal Banks, I tell you about this all the time, they offer their convenient interactive teller machines that will connect you with a banker virtually and in real time. As a customer of Royal Banks of Missouri, you'll find their personal service is second to none. You can learn more about visiting them on the web at royalbanksofmo.com, royalbanksofmo.com. Royal Banks of Missouri, the community bank for your community.
Hello, fans of the paranormal. I'm Frankie, host of the newest show on News Talk STL, On a Garage. And we'll be discussing everything paranormal, from ghosts, demons, hauntings, and aliens to Skinwalker, Bigfoot, fairies, and the Chupacabra. Every Saturday night between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., me and Jeremy will discuss mysterious events in St. Louis and surrounding areas, including gateway families and unsolved true crimes. That's right. It's all right here exclusively on News Talk STL from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. every Saturday night.
This whole thing's got me thinking about how privileged I've been. America's a wonderful country. If I were a black man, I'd be furious. We're getting frustrated.
Number one for live and local
conservative talk.
There are certain issues that we need improvement. They would rather have this country on its knees than be successful.
News, analysis, opinion.
We have common sense, and the Democrats have none.
101.9 and 94.1.
And I appreciate the discussion.
St. Louis is number one for conservative talk.
News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps brought to you by Window World. Simply the best for less. 314-993-1800 or visit windowworld.com.
Mommy, get away. You get a good job with more pay. You're okay.
You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
It's a gas. Grab that cash with both hands and make a stash.
Judge just delayed George Santos's sentencing until April. The disgraced former congressman from New York was convicted of fraud and identity theft and could get up to 22 years in prison. Santos had requested sentencing be delayed from February until the summer so he could have more time to make money from his podcast to help pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. Prosecutors argued he'd already earned nearly $800,000 from cameos, the documentary, and his salary on Capitol Hill.
George Santos, the disgraced representative. You know, he was, there was a viral video a week or two ago. He was giving Matt Gaetz suggestions on Botox. Matt Gaetz' new show on OANN came out, and he looked Botoxed up. He didn't even look his normal self. And Matt Gaetz, or what's his name here? George Santos.
Santa Claus.
George Santos was giving him makeup advice to him. Did you know, and I think I'm correct on this, did you know that even though George Santos has been kicked out of Congress, that he still has floor privileges and he can go down to the floor of the United States Congress?
Only in America does a disgraced congressman become more popular after he's resigned in disgrace.
Yeah, and
making tons of money. It's crazy.
That's only in America. Kind of shows the debauchery of our country and how far it's gone down. All right, we've talked about that Jimmy Carter's funeral was today, lived to 100 years old, born in 1923. And Axios did a little experiment, a little fun thing about some of the other presidents in our history that if they lived to 100 years old, one of them is Franklin Roosevelt. If he had lived as long as Jimmy Carter, he would have died in 1982. And Ronald Reagan's second year in office. Just imagine FDR being around during Ronald Reagan.
That would have been wild.
John F. Kennedy, who was killed, of course, assassinated in 1963. He would have been eulogized by President Donald Trump in 2017. Abraham Lincoln would have lived to 1909. The guy that freed the slaves would have seen the dawn of aviation, the President Lincoln. Theodore Roosevelt, who as a small boy, he watched Lincoln's funeral procession from his family's New York apartment, would have lived to see nuclear weapons and the early days of the space race before dying in 1958. And if Bill Clinton, if he reaches the century mark in 2046, he will have he'll have a longer record than Jimmy Carter's, which lasted 43 years and 344 days, and is the current record. Just imagine that, being an ex-president for 43 years, almost 50 years.
That's amazing. Almost as long as you were alive before you were president.
Exactly.
And Chris, think about it. When you and I were born, the things that I think sometimes it's good to stop and think back, because we just live such a fast-paced life.
Yeah.
Everybody does these days. But when you and I, the generation we were in, there was no internet. Televisions were gigantic boxes. Maybe you had a colored TV if you were lucky. I mean, the things that the iPhone, the things that we've experienced in our lifetime, it's been stuff of sci-fi novels.
I mean, sometimes I just think about how boring life was in the 70s. You had 3 channels and Channel 9. TV went off about 2 a.m, and you heard the national anthem while they cut off all the channels, and you just heard that sound. There was no cable or anything like that. There was no internet, no computers to go on, so you had to like read a book or do something.
We read a lot more books.
Exactly, and it was like, man, it seems like life was really boring back then, but it wasn't. Tim, our green energy state rep that listens to us, I want him to cover his ears right now if he's listening.
Michael Butler.
It wasn't Michael Butler.
Not Michael Butler. Michael, his name's Michael. Do you remember him?
Oh, we didn't want to
go grab the koozie.
We didn't want
the
to
swag.
We didn't want to call him out.
Oh, he loves it, Chris. He says he loves when we talk about
okay.
it.
I think he wanted us to call him out. I forgot
he loves
his name.
when we talk about him.
Well, I've got some sad news for him here. It's reported that greenhouse gas emissions dropped just 0.2% compared to the year before, according to estimates published Thursday by the Rhodium Group. Despite continued rapid growth in solar and wind power, emission levels stayed relatively flat last year. Because why? The demand for electricity surged nationwide. You know, data centers and things that we need for our modern society take up a whole lot of energy. That led to a spike in the amount of natural gas burned by power plants. The United States is further off track from hitting President Biden's goal of slashing greenhouse gases 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. Tim, I don't think we're going to make it.
Michael Burton. I was close.
Okay.
Michael Burton. Hello, Michael. We love when you listen.
Yeah,
we love when you listen.
I didn't know if you wanted us to call him out.
Oh, he loves our show. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. You know, we talk about Congress and they don't do a lot up there and waste time. This was an interesting statistic I found. It said that last year, 19,304 bills were in the hopper, according to GovTrack.
Holy smokes, really?
Out of 19,304 bills that were introduced, Tim, how many of those bills do you think actually became law? Out of 19,304, take a guess. How many actually became law?
50.
Triple it. Pretty good. 158.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But that's still 19,000.
What is that, Chris? 0.0001%.
So
is that a good thing? Maybe I don't know.
I was about to say, in a sense, that's a good thing because it means that the gears of government are grinding slowly, and we're not having legislation that is passed in the heat of passion.
The last 4 years, that's a good thing.
Yeah, which is what the House is supposed to be anyway. The quote of the day here, Tim, I have from Representative Ann McLean Custer. Okay. She was a Democrat from New Hampshire. Okay. She said the reason why that she decided to retire is because, quote, she said, "I just felt like he tried to kill me once, President Trump, and I'm not available for it again." So that's Representative Ann McLean Custer. That's the reason why she stepped down from Congress, because
I understand
Donald Trump tried to kill her during the resurrection when she had to hide in her office, apparently. And she thought the same thing was going to happen. And so I'm just going to take my $170,000 a year pension and go live on the sunset and enjoy my investments that I made during my congressional career and, one of my insider information and live a real good life.
Safe from all of us evil Republicans.
A good life. Boy, weekend is almost here, and next week, Tim, we've got the swearing in of our new governor and our new constitutional officers. So that is fast approaching. It's January 9th today. It will be January 13th when that happens. But coming up, of course, Larry Connor's USA. Larry's going to ask, why don't LA firemen have enough water? He'll tell you why. The one word the media will not use in the New Orleans terrorist attack. And the J6 committee was legal and proper. Why is there a call to pardon all members? And after that, of course, is the Jamie Allman report from 8 to 10. You have been listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL. Drive safe and have a great evening.
Attention, reptile lovers. Ready to discover your next scaly friend? Welcome to the Show Me Reptile Shop, your ultimate destination for fascinating reptiles and exotic pets, with 3 convenient locations in Troy, St. Peters, and Springfield. We have an amazing selection of snakes, lizards, turtles, and